With me now, Eamon Fitzpatrick and David Gazard. Great to see you both. It looks like, Gaz, I'll go to you first of all. This industrial relations bill, the next set of changes, it's going to get there. The business lobby still not happy with it, but it sounds like it's at least a little bit more palatable than what it once was.
Yeah, I think the crossbench have worked it over. It was largely just an ACTU agenda postmarked to the IR minister. And things are out of whack when the crossbench in the Senate winds it back and it becomes more sensible. I mean, that's point number one. The next is to just say, how does this reflect within the rubric of of inflation? Because at the moment, it looks with huge wage increases going in across a whole number of sectors and less flexible working arrangements, uncoupled from productivity gains. It has no alternative but to be inflationary. And you're seeing why Michelle Bullock at the RBA is saying, well, let's just pause and wait to see what the outcome is before we start talking about rate cuts.
Yep. The right to disconnect with three people on this desk that probably, I don't think maybe ever have. But anyway, I just wonder if this is it realistic to suggest that in a work environment where people are working from home more, there's more flexibility after COVID, employers are being flexible, and yet the Greens are now saying we need the right to disconnect.
Well, Kieran, I think most people know I'd be one of the few people to say anything positive about the Greens. But I will say this, clearly we've got to this point because there is a feeling that people are working harder than ever before, that things have been tough. And I think it actually stems from some of that. Right? And there's no doubt about it, productivity is critical, how we drive this economy, but people being happy at work, that is critical to being productive. And you're right, we don't get to disconnect, but we choose to do that. Let's not forget, there's many, many Australians who have jobs who don't really, they're not as lucky as people like us. They don't get to choose, right? And so I think there is a point, I think there's a very sensible point behind this, as long as we get the balance right, and I think we have to do that given where we are in terms of our economy.
Yeah, you don't want too much red tape because then that has a chilling effect on people being put on in the first place.
100%. But we also don't want to get to a point where people are just treated terribly in the workplace. Yeah. So let's have a sensible conversation about it.
Well, what about the tax debate? I haven't seen you for a few weeks. You've been overseas. What's your read on where this has landed?
Look, it's irritated me to see this thing unfold because, and I think one of the points that's been lost is that what's just happened with stage 3 was the third part of 3 stages of tax reform done over a number of years. The first 2 were for lower and middle income earners. The third was to try to redress this situation of bracket creep and for the 10% of people who pay 50% of income tax at the moment. So to give them a break, to encourage aspiration, that's gone, right? So now, I can understand why, if you're in the lower to middle income bracket, you'd say, yeah, well, thanks, I'll have a third bite of the cherry. That's good, and I understand how the numbers work. But for aspiration, for long-term reform of the tax system, this was done in the national interest, and that's been wiped out. Now, where will the coalition go on it? They're not going to they'll have a differentiated position on tax. They always want to be seen as the party of low tax. So they'll have something. No doubt, I hope it goes back to fixing this situation where you're dragging more people into paying more tax. And the current estimations are the government makes $28 billion more out of this just by sitting and allowing people to flow into higher brackets. So something has to be done on that, or you've just got no reason to work. The other thing I'd say is I think, because it's popular doesn't mean it's going to lead to a vote switch. And you saw what happened in the 19 election where Bill Shorten went up to the guy in the manufacturing worker and he had a crack at him saying, hey, I'm not a high income earner, but I'm going to get affected by your tax changes. I'd be interested to hear where Eamon...
Well, we've been talking about it. I think from the inside, there would be a lot of view around, it's the shift now in the political dynamic. This is a Prime Minister who got accused of a broken promise, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had the coalition who I think actually have the bigger problem. And they've moved very quickly to go from Susan Lee on day one going, we're going to undo all of this, and the light bulb going on. And I think what's telling is the fact that the coalition have just walked away and said, no, we're just going to wave it all through. Because, He is being accused of a broken promise, but it's for the greater goods. They're now being accused of basically switching their position, breaking their initial promise on it, because they're trying to save their own skins. And I think that is actually what now gets played out in the electorate.
You've seen the broken promise impact through carbon tax and various other times. How is this different to those occasions if it does end up seeing a popularity boost for the government?
I think because, number one, it's the greater good. And I think this is a PM who sought to own the issue of character. He defined it as character. He said, what sort of person would I be, knowing what I now know and not wanting to help as many Australians as I can at this point in time. And I think they did the work and they laid it out. And I think that is key here. It's for the greater good.
Notwithstanding your point, and you made it clearly about the hit on aspiration, just the pure politics of it, does it boost Albanese?
Pure populist, right now, hip pocket, I get it, right? I agree with that. The problem for me, longer term, is that it's not in the national interest. So it's not doing anyone any favours as we proceed down the track, because it just encourages bracket creep. The last thing I would say is that Anthony Albanese made this about character. My word is my bond. Now, all of the things where you would change your mind happened, they were happening when he was saying that, right? So he has put the character test on this. He has made it a thing about, and that's going to haunt him, right? With every promise that he makes now, or everything that he tries to deny, the coalition's going to be all over him like a rash.
Gentlemen, appreciate it. We'll see you next week.